Thank you, Mr. Lee. Jamie and I are really excited to be invited here today to participate in your Teacher Day event. My colleague and I have been looking forward to this for quite some time, and we've been able to spend a couple days in your capital city, and we're very happy to be here. Do I need to repeat all that again? Well, thank you very much. We're excited to be here. As Mr. Lee said, our company is involved in educational assessment primarily, and we create and administer tests in English language arts, mathematics, and science throughout the United States. We work for about half of the state governments in the United States in some part of their testing program, either as a prime contractor or a subcontractor. And so we're quite involved in the United States education system of testing. The other thing that we've gotten involved in, as we are the leading company in the scoring of writing, essay writing, and other kinds of writing assessments in the United States. And as we've grown into that, we also have created the PEG writing program. It is an internet-based program that students can write essays, stories, or whatever, and when they have typed their story in, they can push the button and get instant feedback on their writing and how well they've done. And we have marketed this product for several years in the United States, and we serve currently, during the last 3 years, we've served like 2,500 schools and school districts in the United States, and it's been used by over 3.5 million students. And just recently, we have begun moving into helping non-English speakers learn how to write English better. And that's what we're here today to show you about our PEG writing program. We have school districts, schools in Hong Kong, in Sweden, and here in South Korea who are using the program at this time. And we hope that you all will be impressed with Jamie's presentation today, and that you will be interested in using the PEG writing program to improve your students' ability to write in English. Thank you very much. I will get out of the way, and Jamie will present the program to you. Thank you very much.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for having us here today. Education is my passion. I've served as a classroom teacher, a school administrator, and as was said in my introduction, on a nonprofit organizational board in which we work to help provide opportunities for underprivileged youth. And education is something I get extremely excited about. So I'm thrilled to be able to talk to you today. The focus of our session will be on flipped writing workshops and integrating blended learning into writing instruction. Within that, we'll also be talking about PEG writing, which is an amazing program and a wonderful teacher tool. So I'll be able to showcase that for you as we go through and talk about blended writing workshops. So this is our agenda for today. We'll start out by just talking a little bit about why we focus on writing instruction, moving into best practices and some of those challenges that are commonly faced in the classroom. And then after that, we'll talk about what exactly a flipped writing workshop is, and then how we can use tools such as PEG writing to help implement those best practices in the classroom. So I'd like to start out today by just briefly looking at a couple of quotes about why it's so important for us to focus on writing instruction. The first one I have for you is that students learn to write when they are taught to write, in contrast to being assigned to write. Lots of times, writing is one of those subjects in school that kind of gets pushed to the side. Reading and math and science, those are the ones that are often emphasized. And lots of times, especially I know in the United States, what happens is there's very little time for writing. And so oftentimes, students are given an assignment, go write an essay. And lots of times, the process of actually learning how to be a good writer is sort of pushed to the side. So that's something to keep in mind as we're going through this, is that students become effective writers when they're taught the process of good writing. The next one is, by teaching students of all levels how to write, we can make a significant change in their lives, giving them the ability to communicate at high levels, share ideas and knowledge, develop pride in what they have to say and how they say it, and have confidence in their own creativity. One of the things about writing is that it's a form of communication. We communicate with one another in our daily lives, our professional lives, our school lives, all the time. Writing is an invaluable skill that people use to communicate with one another. And so by teaching our students how to become effective writers, we are opening up many doors and possibilities for them. So looking at best practices for effective writing instruction, these are those things that research has told us time and time again are the way that we help our students to become effective writers. The first one is pretty obvious: increase opportunities for student writing. As I said, many times writing kind of gets pushed to the side. Students don't have as many chances to write. But the other thing is not just academic writing, it's having opportunities to write in a variety of modes for a variety of purposes, authentic writing opportunities. Another best practice to help improve writing instruction and writing achievement is increased, individualized, and specific feedback for students. Students need to be able to get feedback, to know what things are they doing well, what things do they need additional support in, and how do they improve in those weaker areas. By increasing the amount of individualized one-on-one feedback that students receive, they become more effective writers. Writers Workshop. Writers Workshop is something that in the United States right now and in many other places is being used as the mode of writing instruction. Using Writers Workshop is actually a best practice that has been correlated with writing growth because it focuses on teaching that writing process. Once again, students are being taught how to write, and so they're becoming more effective writers. Technology. 21st century skills are vital. We think about now how teenagers love to spend time texting or blogging, Facebook posting, writing notes on their Instagram when they post pictures. All of those things are forms of writing. So by integrating in your academic writing instruction with technology, you're not only helping students to access their writing in a way that makes sense to them and is engaging to them, but it also is teaching them those 21st century skills that are crucial. Regular support, training, and collaboration for teachers. This one is huge. One of my previous jobs, I used to provide professional development and support for teachers. And one of the things that I often heard, especially from beginning teachers, is that when they were in college and they were taking their teacher education courses, they were never taught much as far as how to teach students to be good writers. They were taught how to teach reading, they were taught how to teach math, but lots of times they weren't taught how to do an effective lesson plan or to implement effective writing instruction. Providing those teachers with that regular support and training and the opportunity to collaborate in PLC or with their other colleagues is crucial for helping students to become effective writers. Another best practice is the use of a common tool for teaching and assessing writing. For example, 6 Traits of Writing model is one that we use at PEG Writing, and there are several other ones. But by using a common model, it helps teachers and students to have a common set of expectations so that they know what things they need to strive for in their writing, and teachers know what things they need to look for as they're evaluating the writing. So now let's take a second and talk about challenges. Have any of you in here ever had a hard time teaching writing to your students? I know that tends to be a very difficult one for many people. So what does the research say about those challenges of writing? One of the biggest ones is time. There's just not enough time in the day, and with scheduling. Again, pen and paper writing, traditional writing, is very time consuming. It takes time for students to write. It takes time for teachers to be able to read and review those essays that are handwritten. So just having the time to fit that writing instruction into the schedule and allowing students to practice their writing is very time consuming. Class size. Another challenge is that if I'm one teacher and I have a class of 30 students, it's very challenging for me to be able to provide individual feedback in a timely fashion to each of my students. As I go from student to student, I'm trying to read the essays, provide them with feedback and information that they need to know to help them improve, but while I'm doing that, other students in my class are having to wait until I'm able to get around to them. That can be a challenge, and it is in many classrooms. Another one is differing expectations. Across the board, oftentimes, there's not a common understanding of the role of a teacher in writing instruction. From school to school, the expectation for a teacher varies. Some principals want teachers to spend a lot of time on writing, others not as much. How much the teacher should be involved in the writing instruction process varies as well. Those differing expectations cause a lot of challenges. Additionally, inconsistency. In elementary classrooms, lots of times you'll have certain teachers that spend a lot of time on writing, others that don't touch it as much at all. That inconsistency ends up showing up in achievement results when it comes to student writing. Some students have had that time to practice and learn how to become strong writers, other ones haven't. And so there's some discrepancies there. Student skills. Thank you. Lots of times, students lack the necessary writing skills that they need to be able to be effective. Grammar, spelling, sentence structure, all of those things are challenges for students. When students are not strong in these areas, oftentimes they become more reluctant, they're not as confident, and so they don't want to write. They're not as engaged, and so it causes a problem when students are going to write. Teacher confidence as well. Oftentimes teachers will report they're not sure how to effectively teach writing. They're not sure how to provide the type of feedback that students need in order to help them be more successful with their writing achievement. And then finally, we touched on this before, but student reluctance. Many times students think writing is boring. They don't want to write. They're just not interested. It hurts their hand after a while. They don't want to take the time to do multiple revisions of their writing. It's just not something that they're oftentimes interested in. Another challenge is that oftentimes writing instruction is very teacher-centered. Again, it focuses on the teacher. It's not helping students to collaborate. It's requiring students to be dependent on the teacher to give them feedback before they can move to the next step in the writing process. And oftentimes it's product-based. So there's an overemphasis on finishing a writing piece as opposed to emphasizing the process of going through writing a draft, revising and editing, sharing and collaborating, getting that feedback, and then producing the final piece. Lots of times there's an overemphasis on the finalized piece. So what do we do? How do we overcome those writing challenges? Today what I'd like to talk to you about is how we can integrate technology into our writing instruction in order to help us to improve student writing achievement. Blended learning is becoming more and more popular. So when I say the term blended learning, what I mean is a combination of in-class instruction provided by the teacher combined with an online or technology-based component. And so today, what I'd like to talk about is how you can take a traditional writer's workshop model and you can make that into a blended learning format for your students. So first, let's take a look at a traditional writer's workshop model. What are the components? So I have a little graphic here. This just shows a general breakdown. It can vary from teacher to teacher depending on how they've chosen to break down their writer's workshop. But in general, this is sort of the way the components of the workshop fall. About 20% of the time is spent on a teacher-led mini lesson. So that's a time when the teacher is in front of the class and he or she is providing instruction on some aspect of writing. Perhaps it's how to write an introduction, perhaps it's something a little bit more specific, such as sentence fluency. 20% of the time is spent on work sharing. So that would be things such as students are sharing their writing for peer review with one another, providing one another with feedback, or it might be something such as an author's chair, where students have the opportunity to share their work with their peers and to receive feedback. 40% of the time is that independent work process. That's when students are driving the writing process themselves. They're taking their time to write, revise, edit, to make their writing as good as they can possibly do it. That's about 40% of the time in the writer's workshop. And then finally, 20% is wrap up. That's where, after all of those other components have been completed in the writer's workshop session, the teacher brings the class back together and they do a wrap up. They're reflecting and thinking about what went well, what didn't go so well, what things do they need to work on in the future, all of those things. So those are your components of a traditional writer's workshop model. Writer's workshop focuses on two things. It focuses on the process of writing, so those steps in the writing process. It also focuses on the product. The idea is that you're learning how to become a writer by following that writing process, and that at the end you'll have a high quality piece of writing that you're able to publish. Teachers teach mini lessons in class. Lots of times, mini models use the 6 traits of writing as a basis for those mini lessons. Students also spend a lot of time in Writer's Workshop conferencing with the teacher and their peers. This gives them a chance to receive ample feedback. Not only are they hearing suggestions and ideas from their teacher, but they're also hearing it from their classmates. They're getting ideas for what they can do to make their writing better. And then they also have multiple opportunities to write and revise and write and revise again. And then finally, they're publishing their writing. That might be something as simple as posting it on a blog. It might be something as simple as writing a final copy in their neatest handwriting and displaying it in the classroom on the wall or in the hallway. But whichever way they choose to do it, there's some form of publishing happening so that their writing is being valued and it's also being made to be very authentic. So now I want to spend some time talking about flipping the Writer's Workshop model. So I've provided a little graphic up here just to think about what a flipped classroom is. So if you look on this side over here, you'll see the traditional classroom. You'll see the students are sitting in a row, they're facing the teacher is up in front, there's notes on the board, the teacher's giving a traditional lecture, they've got homework, which might be to go and practice whatever the teacher has taught them. That's more of a traditional classroom setup, right? Well, in a flipped classroom, whether it's for writing or anything else, the flipped classroom takes the teacher, and now the teacher has moved to the side. There's a phrase, and it says it on this graphic as well. The teacher moves from the sage on the stage to the guide on the side. They're moving from being the central focus to moving to the side and allowing the students to take more ownership over the learning process. So you'll see in this graphic up here, now instead of the teacher being up front with the students just staring at him, the students are working and collaborating together. They're no longer sitting in straight rows, they're in small groups. The teacher is guiding, and you'll also see a note on the board that says, "Watch the lecture online tonight." One component of many flipped classrooms is that the teacher will actually record themselves doing a mini lesson, and some of the teaching material is provided for homework. So that way when students come into the classroom the next day, they're ready to get started. Now, this can be done several ways with Writer's Workshop, and we'll talk about that as we go through. So the similarities of a Writer's Workshop model to a typical flipped classroom. Both of them are asking students to collaborate and work together. In both a regular Writer's Workshop model and a traditional flipped classroom model, students have more ownership over their learning. They are the ones who are driving the learning process, the speed with which they move through. The shift in the teacher's role. In Writer's Workshop, the teacher, aside from the mini lesson, is also more of the guide on the side. They're helping students, they're conferencing, but they really are taking a back seat and allowing students, as I said, to drive their own learning process. There are a number of options for a workshop mini lesson. If I'm going to do a flipped Writer's Workshop and I want to start integrating in technology, I have a number of options. One option would be that I could do just like this graphic has for a flipped classroom. I could record my mini lessons and I can make them available on my classroom website, on my blog, however I am communicating electronically with my students, and they can watch my lesson for homework that night. That's one option. As we start looking more at the PEG writing program, I'll also show you that there are some other options for how those mini lessons can be done electronically to allow students more time to focus on their writing. So as we're talking about a flipped Writer's Workshop, it's one of those things that there are many, many resources out there for helping teachers to flip a classroom. That's a new trend that is becoming more and more popular in many subjects such as math or regular reading, but there's very few things out there that support teachers with really flipping a Writer's Workshop model. And so today what I'd like to do is talk you through our PEG writing program and help you to see some ways that we can use that program to support a flipped Writer's Workshop model. So let's take a little closer look. First of all, some of you may be wondering, what is PEG writing? So let's talk about that. PEG writing is a web-based writing practice program, and it's designed for grades 3 through 12. It's a formative program. It's designed to give students the opportunity to practice their writing. It also is based on an award-winning automated scoring engine, which is called PEG, which stands for Project Essay Grade. And what the scoring engine does is when students submit their essays, they are provided with instant feedback and suggestions for improving their writing based on the 6 traits of writing, spelling, and grammar. So we talked a little bit earlier about the common writing challenges, things that are struggles for teachers as they're doing their writing instruction. So how can PEG writing help to solve some of those problems? You'll see it in action in a few moments, but the first thing is student motivation and engagement. By connecting writing instruction and writing practice to technology, students are sort of by default automatically engaged. The other thing is that students are able, because they receive this instant feedback from the program, they're able to instantly know what things they need to work on, how they can improve, so they're not stuck sitting around just waiting for feedback. Many times if students submit a paper in a traditional classroom, they have to wait maybe even a week or so until their teacher is able to give them feedback. With this program, they're able to know instantly how they did. They're also given scores so they can actually watch their improvement grow. Each time they submit a draft, they'll get a score back, and so they can see their growth as they're working on their writing. It's very motivating for students. Differentiation. This is huge. When you are one teacher and you have a large class size, or even if you have a small class size, you have to work with the students you are given, which means many times they might be at a wide variety of grade levels. They might, even if they're in a, let's say, third grade class, you may have students performing at a kindergarten or first grade level. You might have some students who are more advanced that are working at a fourth, fifth, sixth grade level. And it's your job as the teacher to meet the needs of each one of those students. Tag writing allows for differentiation. Because each student's essays are being reviewed and scored, they are able to get feedback based on their own individual needs. Additionally, teachers are able to adjust the scoring level. So if you have a student who needs some additional scaffolding or support with their writing, you're able to make the scoring level lower. If you have a student in your class that needs a little bit more of a challenge, you're able to adjust the scoring level up to provide them with that extra challenge. So it helps teachers to very easily be able to meet the individual needs of the students. Reports. This is where teachers are able to very easily see where their students are at. One of the things that is often a struggle for teachers is that, especially with writing instruction, is that they don't know exactly what their students do and do not know. They've seen their writing, they kind of have an idea, yes, this student's a good writer, or maybe they're not such a good writer, but oftentimes they're not sure exactly what are they good at, what do they need help with. So this program provides the teacher with very detailed information about each individual student's strengths and then areas of need. Collaboration. That's one of those best practices we talked about before, and the program allows for students to collaborate with one another by submitting their essays for peer review. It also allows teachers to be able to collaborate with one another. This is huge. If you wanted to have your students write across the curriculum, so for example, if you wanted your students to be able to write in science, what you can do using peg writing is to be able to add 2 teachers to a class and allow the science teacher and the ELA teacher to collaborate together to review that student's writing. So it really facilitates that collaboration process, not only for students, but also among teachers and administrators. Targeted lessons. This is another great feature of the program that you'll see in action in a moment. The program provides students with lessons on each of the 6 traits of writing, and there will be recommended ones based on their score report. So when they get that feedback from the program, they're able to see, okay, here's some things I can go and work on. So at this time, I'm going to come out of my PowerPoint. I'm going to actually log on to peg writing and show you what it's all about. So as I do this today, I'm going to first log on as a student and walk you through the peg writing user experience. And then after that, I will log on as a teacher and show you what it looks like from that perspective. One of the really great things about peg writing is that it is an online program. And so what's great about that is that it means that students and teachers alike are able to access peg writing 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. They're not just limited to writing at school. This is one of those things that supports doing a flipped writer's workshop model, because students are able to utilize this program at any time. If they wanted to log on and view a lesson for homework prior to coming into school the next day and getting ready to write, they can certainly do that. It also means that there's nothing for students to have to download on their computers. All they need is a web browser and internet connectivity. Okay, I'm going to log on now as a student. Okay, so we will log on now as a student, and I will show you what this peg writing program is all about. So when students log into peg writing, they're brought to their course homepage. This is where they can see any of the courses that they have been enrolled in by their teacher or their school. And so you can see this student has been enrolled in 3 different courses. Students also have access to some accessibility options. This is also on the teacher side as well. They're able to adjust their font size, do a color contrast if needed. There's a line reader option that can be helpful if students need support with visual tracking. And then, of course, they can undo. So those are all things just to help support the accessibility of the program for students. And then when a student is ready to enter into one of their courses, they simply click the link and it brings them into one of their courses. So this one, as I mentioned, was a sample 7th grade course. And so students are able to see their writing history. Any essay that a student has written and submitted for this course is here. They can see which prompt they responded to, what step they were on, if it was scored or not, if it was peer reviewed or not, and if they had any messages. They also can see if they had a pending peer review request. As I mentioned, that collaboration part is key in a flipped writers workshop, and so students are able to receive and send peer review requests. And so if they receive one, they're able to read an essay from their peer and then provide them with the feedback in the form of 2 stars and a wish, so 2 positives and 1 constructive piece of feedback. And so they're able to type their comments directly in and then submit. And so that's how they can provide one another with support and information about how to improve their writing. The next thing that students are able to access are those lessons we talked about. You'll notice that the lessons are provided in each of those 6 traits of writing. They can be navigated by just using this drop down. And for each one, it will tell students the title of the lesson, how long it will take for them to complete it, the level, whether it's beginning, intermediate, or advanced. And then for each of our lessons, read aloud is available. This can be a really great support, especially for students who might be second language learners that are using the program, because it does enable them to have that read aloud capability, so they're not having to focus as much on comprehension. For each one of these lessons, teachers are able to assign them by telling students which ones they'd like them to complete. Students are able to access them directly from their score reports because they've been recommended by the program, or students can just come to this lessons tab and decide, you know what, I need extra help on elaboration and essays, and I'm going to come here and go through this lesson. Each one of the lessons, and I'll just click on one to give you an example. This is a beginner lesson on developing ideas in narrative. Students are able to control by just clicking, and so they navigate through the lesson. They also can turn the read aloud feature on or off. And so as they go through, it gives them a little mini lesson. It gives them some information. And then after that, it will give them a visual example. So, I ate a hamburger. This sentence doesn't really tell the reader a lot, and it gives them that visual example of a pretty plain hamburger. Doesn't really look like one I'd want to eat for dinner. But then it gives them another example. Look at this hamburger. Now we've got 2 patties, we've got cheese, lettuce, tomato. This is a much better hamburger. It's much more detailed. So this sentence, I ate a hamburger with cheese, lettuce, tomato, and onions, it tells the reader a lot more. And so it gives them those visuals to help support their understanding of the concept. And then as they go through, they become, they go to a place in the lesson where it asks them to do an interactive exercise. With these interactive exercises, they are formative. They're designed to be practice. So they're able to, for example, for this one, they drag and drop. They try to find a step in the narrative and find a detail that would be a good supporting detail. So let me show you what that looks like. So this is the example here. So they'll drag a narrative step down from the list, and then after that, they'll find the detail from below, the elaboration that goes along with it. Now, if they get it right, it gives them a green check, and they can go on and work on the next one. However, if it's wrong, it gives them a red X, but it gives them the chance to try again. So it truly is practice. They're still getting that feedback. They're able to do these very independently without a teacher standing right there beside them. So it gives them that ongoing instruction to help them improve in that area. And then they're able to navigate through the lesson themselves. The next tab on the student side is the practice writing tab. So this is where students can go whenever they're ready to write an essay. Teachers are able to enable different prompts for them, and we'll talk about that more when we look on the teacher account. But let's say I'm a student and I log on to my account and I'm ready to write an essay, and perhaps I want to respond to this prompt, chocolate milk in schools. I click the prompt I want to respond to, and then I'm able to read the prompt here. And so I can see that this prompt is asking me to read the article and then write an essay in the argumentative genre about whether I think that chocolate milk should be served at school cafeterias for lunch. And I'm supposed to use textual evidence from the article that I read to help support my reasoning and my thinking. And so after that, I've got a link right here to the article that I'm supposed to read. So I'm able to click that. And again, thinking about that flipped writer's workshop model, this is where students are able to access some of these things individually. They may be able to do this from home for homework so that when they come into the classroom and they're ready to do the actual writing portion, they're ready to go. They're prepared. Teachers can also pre-record some of their lessons and attach them to prompts in this way so that students are able to access them. And so when they click the link, they're able to come and read this article, Is Chocolate Milk Unhealthy? And so after a student has read that article and they've thought about their prompt, they have two choices. They can pre-write, which means they begin filling out their graphic organizer, planning out their writing, or they can go right into writing, to the writing itself. So we'll look at pre-writing just so you can see what it looks like. So when they click to pre-write, they're brought to a graphic organizer page. The ones on the top are the recommended graphic organizers. They're recommended based on being appropriate for the grade level and also based on the genre. The ones below are also grade level appropriate, but they might not be as good of a fit for that particular prompt. For example, this is an argumentative prompt, so asking the 5 W's probably wouldn't help me plan my essay very well. So I want to choose one of the ones up here from the recommended graphic organizers. So I'll use this 4-square one. And students are able to actually type interactively directly into the graphic organizer. So they can plan out their writing. So in the center, they can type their topic, chocolate milk in schools, and then they can actually type right into the graphic organizer their first idea, second idea, and they can plan out their writing in this way. Everything that students type on the PEG writing program is auto-saved every 60 seconds. So if a student, for example, accidentally knocked their laptop off the table and it disconnected them, or the internet went out, or the electricity flipped on and off, or something like that, they would not lose their work. So it automatically is saving the work that they do. And then after they've planned out their writing, they have two choices. They can either save and come back another time and start writing, or they can select next and they can begin the writing process. So if I click next, it moves me over to the text box. I can either type directly into it, like that, or I can copy and paste from a Word document. The other thing I can do at any time is I can scroll up and view that graphic organizer. So as I'm getting ready to do my writing, I can still refer to the planning that I did. When students hover over their the prompt right here, they also have a little highlighter icon so they can highlight any key words in their prompt. And they also have a link to their stimulus material. So if they need to review that article or anything like that, they're able to very easily click and access. There's a timer that can be turned on or off depending on the teacher's needs. And so what I'm going to do now, just for time's sake, is I'm going to copy and paste an essay so that you can see the type of feedback that students receive. Okay, so this student has written this essay and they're now ready to figure out how they did. So they click submit. And when they do, they get what we call a score report. So with the score report, they'll see their prompt again, and then they'll see the essay. Now within the essay, they have inline spelling and grammar feedback. So you'll see the grammar is highlighted in green with a G, and when they click it, it will actually tell them what they can do to improve their writing. So this one says the first word in a sentence or title should be capitalized. So it lets them know that they need to go in and complete that action. The other thing that the program provides feedback on is the spelling. So for example, this word here, chocolate, if a student clicks on that little red S, it says this word may be misspelled. Did you mean? And it provides them with the corrected spelling for chocolate. So they're able to go in and get that feedback. This is also one of those features that teachers can choose to hide until a little bit later, so if you don't want them to see it right away, they don't have to, but it does give them that instant feedback, so they have an idea right away without having to wait for the teacher to have their turn to get to them, exactly some things that they can work on. As they scroll down, they receive a score report. So this is where they get those number scores. So the way PEG rating scores work is that in each of those 6 traits of writing, students receive a score from 1 to 5. So the 6 traits are development of ideas, organization, style, word choice, sentence fluency, and conventions. And so you can see here the student gets a visual representation in a graph form of what their score was in each of those traits. They also get a total score that combines all of those traits of writing. And so the lowest possible total score they could get would be a 6. That would be if they got a 1 in each of those 6 traits. Or the highest possible score they could get would be a 30 if they got a 5 in each of those traits. So this essay was an 8.5. So this student, it's a little bit low, but again, we're looking for growth. So this is a great starting point. And now what they're able to do is scroll down and they get specific information to help them know how to improve their writing. They receive evaluation in the form of questions that help them to reflect and think about what things they can go in and improve in their essay. They may receive some feedback statements that give them some specific things that they need to do. And then here's where we talked about they may have some recommended lessons. They get that feedback for each of those traits of writing. And then when they scroll down to the bottom, they also have the ability to send a message to their teacher. If you're using Writer's Workshop in a flipped model where students are doing some of the work outside of the classroom and they're using this technology, this is a really great tool to have because teacher and student are able to very easily communicate back and forth with one another about any questions or any other type of feedback that may be going on. So a student may say something to their teacher like, "How do I make my score better?" That's one we see a lot. And they post it, and the next time the teacher logs in, they'll see this question from their student. So they're able to type a response and let the student know some suggestions. One thing about PEG writing is that it does not replace the teacher in the classroom, but it's a really great teacher tool. It's time saving and it provides that support so that students are not left waiting for that feedback and information about what things they need to do to improve. After they've written the first time, they can request peer review by just simply clicking a button, and now their essays have been shared with their peers. So that collaboration piece, that best practice that we talked about, is now very easily done through this program. The other thing they can do is they can work on revising and editing by just clicking this revise button. And so when they do that, they're able to take that feedback that they received and use it to make their essay better. And I'm going to just copy and paste one more time so you can see an example of what it looks like when they've done that. I am going a little quickly right now just because of time purposes. I want to make sure I have time to show you from the teacher perspective as well. But they submit their essay. And when they do, again, they get updated feedback. So you can see there's another spelling error here. The student is able to click and get feedback on what they can do to improve that. They also, over here on the upper right, are able to see their other drafts. So they can see where did they start at and now where have they worked up to with their essay. But here's the part that really gets those students motivated. The student's first version of the essay was, I think, an 8.2, 8.3, something like that. This student has worked really, really hard on their essay, and now they've increased their score up to a 21.8. So with that feedback, they were able to drastically improve the quality of their writing, and now they're also very motivated. They have more confidence because they know that they can see their growth happening in real time as they submit these essays. And so after they submitted their revised version, they have an updated writing analysis, and so they can continue to try to improve their essay. Students also have a portfolio, and we'll look at this in more detail on the teacher side, but this is where they can go to see a breakdown of their data. They can see all of their essays and see detailed information about how they're scoring in each of those traits of writing. So again, a lot of this is now online so that they are able to take that writer's workshop process, which is one of those best practices, but now do it in a way that integrates in technology. All right, we are going to sign out as a student and now sign on as a teacher. So you can see, okay, this looks pretty good from the student perspective, but what about for the teachers? So when a teacher logs in on PEG Writing, it looks pretty much the same. Any courses that they teach are now listed here. We'll go into the same course that that student we were just in as was in. So when a teacher logs in, they see the writing history for every student in their class. They're able to see the date when the essay was written. They're able to see which student submitted it, what prompts they responded to, what draft they were on. So was it their first draft or their fifth? They're able to see if the essay was scored or peer-reviewed, and they also can see if they have any new messages from their students by just, right here it'll have a little link and it says there's one new message. They can click on the date to drill down and view the actual essay itself. So if I wanted to review Mia's essay, I can come here and I see the same feedback that PEG Writing gave Mia, but I can also add my own because again, it's not replacing me as a teacher, it's just a tool. I have an electronic sticky note here where I can give my own feedback to my students. I might give them a suggestion for how they can improve, or I might try to give them some other feedback, or maybe I'm giving them praise for doing a good job. But after I type my comments and I click OK, now when Mia logs in, she can click on that sticky note and she'll be able to see what I, as her teacher, have given her as far as feedback goes. I can also do the same with additional spelling and grammar if I wish to do so. I scroll down, I can see what scores Mia has gotten, so I know exactly where she's at and how she did on that essay. I also have, as a teacher, the ability to give her a score of a 1, 2, or 3 on textual evidence. So if I asked her, like in this prompt, to read an article and then use it to support my thinking, I can give her a score on how well she did that. I can assign I can assign a couple stars. I just made it really big. And then I can also type some evaluation statements here. So I can explain the reason for the score, or I can give suggestions. Whatever I want to say there to Mia, or whichever student I'm responding to. I also can score here for content accuracy. That's where that writing across the curriculum piece comes in. If the science teacher and I are working together and I want to give them a score, maybe she had to write about ecosystems, and I want to give her feedback on whether the information about ecosystems was correct or not. This is where I can do that. So I can assign again a score of a 1, 2, or 3, and I can explain why. I can respond to my students' messages, so I can see where Mia said, how do I make my score better? And I can respond to that. And the next time Mia logs in, she'll now see that she has a new message from me. Coming back up, just briefly, I'll walk you through the other things here. The Lessons tab on the teacher side is exactly the same as the students. Teachers might choose to use this as a mini lesson. They may, for whole group, they may try to do some small guided writing groups, and so pull a small group of students together based on the data and go through a lesson like this. Or they may choose to have students do this at home for homework as part of the writing model in a flipped situation. The Students tab allows teachers to very easily manage their class. They have the usernames and passwords. More importantly, though, this is where they can add or remove students from their class. They can differentiate the scoring level for students. This is what I was mentioning to you before. So they can adjust that scoring level as needed. For prompts, teachers are provided with a number of prompts that are available for them to choose to use already. But teachers also have the ability to add prompts of their own. So if in class you're working on something and you want to add your own writing prompts, maybe your students are reading a book and you want them to respond to that particular book, you can create your own prompt very easily for students to be able to respond to. Finally, teachers have reports that they are able to utilize to help them really get a very detailed look at how they are doing. The performance report allows teachers to see the averages for each individual student, to see how they're doing in each of those 6 traits of writing, and to look at trends. I can easily look at developing ideas here in this first column and see which of my students need extra support in that area. I can drill down to view the essays themselves and the scores. I also see my scores broken down by genre, so I can see how my students are doing in narrative writing or argumentative. The prompt analysis report is very similar, but it allows me to see how my students are doing on individual prompts. So if I assigned the same prompt to everybody in my class, I can see how my students scored. I can see how many essays were submitted and what their average scores were. If I click, I can drill down and I now see everyone that submitted the essay and their scores. The program also offers, let me go back, a usage report that allows me to very easily monitor how my students are using the program, how many essays, lessons, peer reviews are being completed. I'm able to see it at a glance. And finally, the progress report. This allows me to view the average monthly scores for my students. And what I'm hoping to see is a nice upward trend in my data. If my student, William, was at an average of 10.7 in October, I would hope that by November, December, maybe his average score has now increased to an 11 or a 12. So I'm able to very easily track the growth of my students. I also have a line plot here. You can see I had a little dip in the data for this demo class, and that does happen sometimes, but overall I want to see a nice upward trend in my data. So that's the PEG rating program, and I'm going to come back over now to this PowerPoint as we wrap up and just talk you through some of the research with PEG rating. A lot of different research has actually been done on PEG rating by independent researchers. One of the things that we found is that the feedback and tools actually help to reduce the amount of time teachers are spending on providing feedback. Time was one of those big challenges we talked about earlier, and this is a way to help with that. We also have found that there were significant gains in writing motivation and confidence of students. So as they're using PEG writing as part of this writer's workshop model, they are improving in their motivation. That reluctance is starting to go away. They're increasing in how much they're willing to revise their writing. Instead of just writing one draft and saying, I'm done, I'm not going to write anymore, they're now more willing to try to revise and improve their score. They're demonstrating improvements in their initial first draft scores. It's getting better and better each time they're writing, the more they use the program. There are fewer spelling and grammar errors, so they're improving in those areas. We've also found that the scores from PEG writing are able to help identify which students are at risk of failing their writing assessments. So it's able to really give us a better look at which students do we need to work with to help support them in their writing. In conclusion, the benefits of using a flipped writer's workshop model, there are so many. Students are motivated, their writing achievement is increasing, it's easier on the teacher, and many of those challenges that we discussed before are being overcome. And then a final thought I wanted to leave you with. According to NAEP, their 2011 writing framework, just something to think about. Writing today is an essential skill for many, whether it's in the workforce, school, or personal lives. Writing is critical. We write now more than ever for a variety of purposes. And 21st century writing is dominated by technology, whether it's for personal use, professional, or academic. Modern writers have got to be able to express their ideas in ways that help them to be effective communicators. By using some of those best practices we talked about today and being open to flipping writers' workshops and using tools such as PEG writing, students are able to achieve that writing growth to help them to become successful communicators for 21st century. Thank you so much. I think Dr. Sherrick is coming up.
Thank you, Jamie. Very, very nice job as usual. Jamie and I will be here for the rest of your workshop. And if you have any individual questions, please ask probably her, but I would answer some of them too. So thank you very much. And we appreciate the opportunity to be here and explain our writing program to you. Have a good day.